The sound of a woman's voice, bright and professional, reached me even before I made it to the porch. I'd cut out of work early that Tuesday, a pounding migraine forcing me home, never once considering what I'd actually find when I pulled into my driveway. 3 unfamiliar cars lined the street, their presence already a quiet anomaly. My house keys, usually so light, felt strangely heavy in my palm as I walked up the path. The master bedroom has excellent natural light, the voice echoed from upstairs, followed by, original hardwood throughout, recently refinished. My blood went cold. Someone was giving a tour of my house. I pushed through the front door, finding a small group already gathered in my living room. A blonde woman, dressed sharply in a navy blazer, held a folder, gesturing vaguely toward the staircase. 2 couples, middle-aged and nodding along, were examining the crown molding I'd spent months restoring myself. For a moment, nobody noticed me. They were too engrossed, admiring the built-in bookshelves I designed, discussing furniture layouts, treating my sanctuary as if it already belonged to someone else. "Excuse me?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "What exactly is happening here?" The real estate agent, Ms. Jensen, turned, her professional smile faltering. "Oh, are you the tenant? I apologize, but you should have received notice about the showing. The owner arranged this through our office last week." "The owner?" I stepped further into my own living room, dropping my purse onto the console table I'd inherited from my grandmother. "I am the owner. This is my house." Her smile vanished completely. "That's impossible. We have all the documentation. Mrs. Hayes is selling the property." Hayes. My maiden name, the one I'd kept after my divorce 3 years ago. But I hadn't contacted any real estate agency. I hadn't even considered selling. "I think there's been a serious mistake," I said, my hands starting to tremble. "I need everyone to leave now." Ms. Jensen's expression shifted from confusion to irritation. She opened her folder, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "I have a signed listing agreement right here. All the proper authorizations. Perhaps you're confused about the ownership status." She thrust the documents toward me. My own signature stared back from the bottom of the page, but I'd never seen these papers in my life. The handwriting was close enough to fool someone who didn't know better, but I spotted the differences immediately. The way the O in Olivia curved too sharply, the H in Hayes that didn't quite match my usual flourish. Someone had forged my signature. Someone had tried to sell my house without my knowledge. "I'm calling the police," I announced, reaching for my phone. Ms. Jensen stepped back, already herding her clients toward the door. "There's clearly some dispute here. We'll need to sort this out with the listing party." She ushered everyone outside, leaving business cards scattered on my coffee table. The couples cast worried glances over their shoulders, probably wondering if they'd just participated in some kind of real estate scam. The house fell silent. I stood in the middle of my living room, documents clutched in shaking hands, trying to process it all. Someone had forged legal papers with my name. Someone had contacted a real estate agency, provided false authorization, and arranged to sell my property. Who would do this? Who even had access to the information they'd need? My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, Eleanor. "Coming over tonight for dinner. Chloe will be there, too. 6 p.m. I stared at those words, and something cold settled in my stomach. Eleanor never invited herself over. Chloe hadn't visited my house in over a year. The coincidence seemed too perfect. Too convenient. Unless it wasn't a coincidence at all. I called the real estate agency first, demanding answers. The receptionist put me through to the broker, who seemed genuinely shocked when I explained the situation. "Mrs. Hayes, we verified everything. The woman who came to our office had identification, proof of ownership, all the necessary documents." "What woman?" I pressed. "Describe her." "Tall, brown hair, probably mid-40s. She brought her daughter with her, actually. They seemed very legitimate. My mother and sister. They'd impersonated me, forged my signature, and attempted to sell my house. The realization hit like a physical blow. I want copies of everything, I demanded. Every document they provided, security camera footage if you have it, phone records of your communications. This is fraud, and I'm pressing charges. The broker's tone changed immediately. Of course, we'll cooperate fully with any investigation. I'm so sorry this happened. After hanging up, I walked through each room of my house, looking for signs of intrusion. Nothing appeared disturbed. They must have used my spare key, the one I'd given Eleanor years ago for emergencies. She'd let herself in, probably multiple times, preparing for this scheme. The question gnawing at me was why? What could possibly motivate my own family to try and take my home? I didn't have long to wonder. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I'd spent the afternoon contacting attorneys, filing police reports, and securing my property. Now, I stood at the threshold, looking through the peephole at my mother and sister, waiting on the porch. I opened the door without greeting them. Olivia. Eleanor pushed past me, her usual presumptuous energy filling the entryway. We need to talk about something important. Chloe followed, avoiding eye contact. She'd always been the quieter one, content to let Eleanor orchestrate whatever drama suited her purposes. She looked nervous tonight, fidgeting with her purse strap. I know what you did, I said, closing the door and leaning against it. The real estate agent was here today with potential buyers. Imagine my surprise. Eleanor's face flushed, but she didn't back down. Don't be ridiculous. You're clearly confused. I have the forged documents, I countered. The agency gave me copies of everything, including security footage of you impersonating me. The silence stretched between us, heavy with implications. Chloe glanced at Eleanor, panic flickering across her features. But Eleanor simply straightened her shoulders, lifting her chin in that defiant way she'd perfected over decades of manipulation. You don't need this house, she said flatly. You're alone. No husband, no children. Chloe has a family to support. She needs the equity more than you do. The casual cruelty of those words stole my breath. So, you decided to steal my property, to commit fraud and sell my home without my consent. Steal is such an ugly word. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. We're a family. Everything should be shared. Your father and I helped with your down payment years ago. That gives us a stake in this property. You gave me $5,000 as a gift, I retorted. I've paid every mortgage payment, every renovation cost, every property tax bill. This house is mine. You've always been selfish, her voice rose, taking on that shrill quality that had dominated my childhood. Your sister is struggling. Mark lost his job. They're behind on rent. But you live here in this big house all by yourself, refusing to help family. I didn't refuse anything. Nobody asked me for help. Chloe finally spoke up, her voice small and apologetic. We thought if we could just sell the house, split the money, everyone would benefit. You could get a smaller place, something more appropriate for a single woman. We'd pay off our debts. It made sense. It made sense to commit fraud? I stared at her in disbelief. To forge legal documents and try to take my home? Eleanor stepped forward, her expression hardening. Stop being dramatic. We did what was necessary. You've always had everything handed to you. It's time you learned to share. The gaslighting was so familiar, so practiced. Throughout my childhood, Eleanor had perfected this technique of turning reality inside out, making her victims question their own perceptions. She convinced my father, Richard, to hand over his entire inheritance to her, isolating him from his siblings. She'd manipulated Chloe into dropping out of college, claiming she was needed at home. And now she'd attempted to steal my house, somehow believing she had the right. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you, leave my house immediately." Eleanor's face contorted with rage. "How dare you speak to me that way? After everything I've sacrificed for you, you just tried to steal my house because you don't deserve it." She was screaming now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "You've always thought you were better than us. Moving away, getting your fancy job, buying this house in the nice neighborhood. Well, I'm done watching you parade around while your sister suffers. Chloe made her own choices. So did you," I said firmly. "None of that gives you the right to commit fraud." My sister grabbed Eleanor's arm, trying to pull her toward the door. "Mom, we should go. This isn't working." But Eleanor shook her off, taking another step toward me. "You want to call the police? Press charges against your own family? Fine, do it. But don't come crying to us when you're old and alone with nobody who cares whether you live or die. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by thieves. Get out of our lives." She was shrieking now, completely unhinged. "You're not my daughter anymore. I wish I'd never had you." Chloe tugged harder, finally managing to drag Eleanor backward. "Mom, please, let's just go." They stumbled toward the door, my mother still hurling insults over her shoulder. "You'll regret this. You'll see what it's like when family turns their back on you." I slammed the door behind them, my whole body shaking. Through the window, I watched them argue beside their car. Eleanor was still gesturing wildly, her face purple with fury. Chloe kept glancing back at the house, looking like she might cry. My phone buzzed again. A text from Chloe. "I hope you die in a car accident. At least then we get something from you." I stared at those words until they blurred. My own sister wished me dead. Not in the heat of an argument, but in a calculated text message sent after she'd left my house. She thought about it, typed it out, and hit send. They wanted me gone. They wanted my money, my house, everything I'd built for myself. And they clearly spent time planning how to make it happen. Fine. If they wanted me gone, I'd disappear. But not in the way they hoped. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every interaction with my family over the past few years, searching for clues I'd missed. The way Eleanor had asked detailed questions about my mortgage payments last Christmas. How Chloe had seemed overly interested in my refinancing process 6 months ago. The spare key I'd given Eleanor for emergencies that I'd never thought to retrieve. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, gathering information, learning the details of my financial situation, preparing their scheme piece by piece. The realization made me nauseous. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I gave up on sleep and made coffee. Sitting at my kitchen table, I started making lists. Everything I owned, every account I held, every asset they might know about. I needed to understand the full scope of what they tried to take and what they might attempt next. My house was the obvious target, but what else? I had savings accounts, retirement funds, investment portfolios. I owned my car outright. I had jewelry from my grandmother, artwork I'd collected over the years, furniture that had been in our family for generations. Had they inventoried all of it? Were they planning additional schemes? The paranoia felt justified after what they'd already attempted. If they'd forged documents to sell my house, what else were they capable of? I pulled up my bank accounts on my laptop, checking every transaction from the past year. Nothing seemed suspicious, but I changed all my passwords anyway. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I downloaded my credit report, scanning for unfamiliar accounts or inquiries. Everything appeared clean, but that didn't calm my racing thoughts. They'd already proven they could be patient, methodical, willing to commit serious offenses. What was their end game? As dawn broke, I realized I needed to understand their financial situation better. Chloe had mentioned Mark losing his job, being behind on rent. How desperate were they? Desperate enough to risk prison. I did something I'm not proud of and searched public records. Mark had filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago. They'd been evicted from their previous apartment. Court records showed multiple judgments against them for unpaid debts. Chloe herself had 3 credit cards in collections. They were drowning financially, and they'd looked at my stability with envy that had curdled into entitlement. In their minds, I probably didn't deserve what I had. Single, childless, living comfortably while they struggled. Never mind that I'd worked 80-hour weeks to build my career. Never mind that I'd sacrificed relationships and experiences to achieve financial security. They saw only the end result and decided they deserved a share. Eleanor's involvement made more sense through this lens. She'd always favored Chloe, making excuses for her poor choices, bailing her out of problems. When Chloe's financial crisis reached a breaking point, Eleanor had probably volunteered to fix things by taking from me. The unfairness of it burned in my chest. I would have helped if they'd asked honestly. I would have loaned money, helped with job searches, provided whatever support they needed. But asking would have required a humility they didn't possess. Taking felt easier, more righteous somehow. My phone rang at 7:30. Richard, my father's name, appeared on the screen. I hadn't spoken to him in the entire ordeal. He'd been conspicuously absent from yesterday's confrontation. Olivia. His voice sounded tired, older than I remembered. I just heard what happened. Your mother told me her version, but I need to hear yours. I explained everything, from discovering the real estate showing to Eleanor's screaming departure. He listened without interrupting, his breathing heavy on the line. I didn't know, he said finally. She told me you'd agreed to help Chloe by selling the house and splitting the proceeds. She said it was your idea. Dad, they forged my signature. They committed fraud. How could you believe I'd agree to that? I questioned it, he admitted. But your mother was so convincing. She showed me documents with your signature. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind about helping family. Did you know about Chloe's text message? About her wishing I'd die in a car accident? The silence stretched long enough that I thought we'd been disconnected. Then I heard him clear his throat, the sound thick with emotion. She said what? I read him the message. Another long pause followed. I'm so sorry. His voice cracked. I've let your mother control too much for too long. I've enabled her behavior, made excuses, looked the other way, but this crosses every line. What are you going to do? I'm filing for a separation, maybe divorce. I should have done it years ago, but I kept thinking she'd change. That age would mellow her. Instead, she's gotten worse, and now she's dragged Chloe down with her. The news should have shocked me, but mostly, I felt relief. My father was a good man who'd been dominated by a toxic partner for decades. If this finally pushed him to break free, maybe something positive could emerge from the wreckage. Where will you go? I asked. My sister has a guest house in Texas. She's been telling me to leave your mother for 20 years. Guess she'll finally get to say I told you so. He laughed bitterly. Olivia, I know I can't fix this. I know I failed you by not standing up to her sooner, but I want you to know I love you. I'm proud of who you've become despite everything. And I don't blame you for whatever you decide to do next. Tears burned my eyes. I love you too, Dad. And I'm glad you're finally choosing yourself. After we hung up, I felt a shift in my perspective. This wasn't just about me anymore. Eleanor's toxicity had poisoned multiple relationships, hurt multiple people. My father was escaping. I was escaping. Maybe by taking a stand, I'd inadvertently freed others from her control. The thought gave me strength for what came next. I spent the next 3 days organizing my exit strategy. First, I contacted Daniel Price, the attorney who'd handled my divorce. He listened to my story with growing concern, taking notes on the fraud case building against my family. "This is serious," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Identity theft, fraud, attempted theft by deception. Your mother and sister could face significant criminal charges." "I want to do more than press charges," I leaned forward, my decision crystallizing. "I want to disappear completely. Cut them off from any possibility of getting what they want." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Over the next hour, I outlined my plan. I'd sell the house, but on my terms and timeline. I'd liquidate my local assets, transfer everything to accounts they couldn't access. I'd leave town, start over somewhere they'd never find me. Most importantly, I'd make sure they faced consequences for what they'd attempted. "Your mother gave you that $5,000 gift," Daniel tapped his pen against his notepad. "We can argue that doesn't constitute partial ownership, especially not years later. The house is titled solely in your name. Your mortgage is in your name. You have clear documentation of every payment, every improvement. This is your property, free and clear. Can we go after them for the fraud attempt?" "Absolutely. The real estate agency has already provided documentation of the forged signatures. We have the fake identification they used. Add your sister's threatening text message, and we have a strong case." Daniel leaned forward, his expression serious. "Before we proceed, I need you to understand what you're starting here. Criminal charges against family members create permanent rifts. There's no coming back from this. Are you certain this is the path you want to take?" I didn't hesitate. "They tried to steal my house. My sister wished me dead. What relationship is there to salvage?" "Fair point." He made more notes. "We'll need to document everything. I want you to write down a complete timeline of events, every interaction with your mother and sister regarding your property or finances. Include dates where possible. The more detail, the stronger our case." "What about restraining orders?" "Definitely worth pursuing given the threatening message. We can file for a protection order that prevents them from contacting you or coming near your property. Violations carry serious penalties." Over the next hour, Daniel walked me through the legal process ahead, filing criminal complaints, providing evidence, preparing for possible court testimony. The district attorney would ultimately decide whether to prosecute, but he felt confident they'd take the case given the clear documentation. "One more thing," Daniel said as I gathered my belongings. "Have you considered the possibility that they might retaliate? People facing criminal charges sometimes lash out." The thought had crossed my mind. "What kind of retaliation?" "It could be anything from harassment to property damage to spreading lies about you. I'm not trying to scare you, just preparing you for possibilities. Some people double down when cornered instead of backing off. Then I'll need to be ready." My jaw tightened. "I won't let them intimidate me into dropping this." "Good. Document everything. Save every message, every voicemail, every interaction. If they do anything threatening or unlawful, we add it to the case." Leaving Daniel's office, I felt both empowered and anxious. The machinery of justice was beginning to turn, but the outcome remained uncertain. Would they face real consequences? Would they somehow twist the narrative and make themselves look like victims? My phone rang as I reached my car. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. Olivia Hayes. A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Detective Evans with the Fraud Division. I've been assigned to your case." We arranged to meet the following morning at the police station. Detective Evans explained she'd already contacted the real estate agency and obtained their documentation. She'd also pulled records showing Eleanor and Chloe had researched property transfer laws online, visited multiple real estate offices asking about selling procedures, and made copies of documents from my home during their unauthorized entries. They left quite a trail, the detective said. Frankly, this is one of the more clear-cut cases I've seen. Most fraud attempts are harder to prove, but your mother and sister documented their own offense. That night, I began the emotional work of processing what had happened. Sitting in my living room with a glass of wine, I let myself feel the grief underneath the anger. I'd lost my family, not through death or distance, but through betrayal so profound it couldn't be forgiven. My mother, who should have protected me, had tried to rob me. My sister, who I'd grown up alongside, wished me dead. The family structure I'd known my entire life had revealed itself as hollow, built on dysfunction and manipulation rather than love. But mixed with the grief was something else, liberation. For years, I'd felt obligated to maintain relationships with people who brought nothing positive to my life. Family loyalty had kept me tethered to toxicity, making excuses for behavior I'd never tolerate from friends or colleagues. Now that obligation had been severed by their own actions. I didn't have to feel guilty about distancing myself. I didn't have to wonder if I was being too harsh or unforgiving. They committed offenses against me, and I owed them nothing. I visited my workplace next. I'd been with the accounting firm for 8 years, steadily climbing the ladder. My supervisor, Ms. Chin, listened sympathetically as I explained I'd need to relocate for personal reasons. "We have a branch in Denver," she offered. "I could put in a word if you're interested in a transfer." Denver, 2,000 miles from here, in a city where my family would never think to look. That would be perfect. Consider it done. You're one of our best analysts. We'd hate to lose you entirely. Everything fell into place with surprising speed. My house went on the market through a different agency, listed under an LLC I created to maintain privacy. Potential buyers appeared immediately. The neighborhood was desirable. My renovations had increased the value significantly. Within 2 weeks, I had multiple offers above asking price. I accepted the highest bid and scheduled a quick closing. The buyers were relocating from Florida, eager to settle before their children's school year started. They didn't mind the accelerated timeline. Meanwhile, Daniel filed charges against Eleanor and Chloe. The district attorney's office took the case seriously, especially given the documented evidence. Forging signatures on legal documents qualified as a felony. Identity theft added additional charges. The real estate agency cooperated fully, providing testimony about the fraudulent listing attempt. I wasn't there when the police showed up at Eleanor's house. Daniel called to tell me she'd been arrested along with Chloe. They both posted bail, but court dates were set. The prosecutor was confident about conviction. "Your mother is claiming it was a misunderstanding," Daniel reported. "Says she thought you'd given permission verbally, despite the forged documents and fake identification." The prosecutor pointed that out? I asked. Your mother's attorney looked uncomfortable. I spent my final weeks in town methodically erasing my presence. I closed local bank accounts, transferring funds to new institutions in Colorado. I updated my address with every relevant organization, using a P.O. box initially until I found permanent housing. I said goodbye to the few friends I'd maintained, explaining I needed a fresh start after my family situation had deteriorated. Nobody questioned my decision. Most people had met Eleanor at some point and understood perfectly why I'd want distance. The house closing happened on a Thursday morning. I sat in the title company's office signing papers that transferred ownership to the Florida couple. They seemed like nice people, excited about their new home. I felt a pang of sadness watching the keys change hands, but mostly relief. This chapter of my life was ending. A better one would begin. I'd already shipped most of my belongings to Denver. My car was packed with essentials. After the closing, I drove directly to Eleanor's neighborhood, parking across the street from her house. I pulled out my phone and composed a final message to both her and Chloe in a group text. "You wanted me gone. Congratulations. I've sold the house, closed all local accounts, and accepted a position across the country. You'll never see me again. You'll never know where I live. You'll never get another dollar from me. The criminal charges will proceed without my presence, since the state is prosecuting. Enjoy explaining to everyone why your daughter cut contact. Enjoy your court dates. Enjoy wondering if things could have been different if you just asked for help instead of trying to steal from me. This is what you wanted. I hope it was worth it. I hit send and immediately blocked both numbers. Then I started the engine and drove away, watching Eleanor's house disappear in the rearview mirror. The drive to Denver took 4 days. I stopped at small motels along the way, eating at local diners, slowly decompressing from the stress of the previous weeks. Somewhere in Montana, I started feeling genuinely excited about the future instead of just angry about the past. Denver welcomed me with gray skies and cold temperatures, such a contrast from the humid summers back home. I'd rented a small apartment in the Rhino Art District, a walkable neighborhood full of galleries and cafes. The space was tiny compared to my old house, but it felt like mine in a way that mattered. My new position started on a Monday. The office buzzed with friendly energy, completely different from the competitive atmosphere I'd left behind. My colleagues took me to lunch, showed me around the city, made me feel included. Nobody knew about my past, my family drama, the reasons I'd fled across the country. I was just Olivia here. No history, no baggage, no expectations. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without constantly watching over my shoulder. 3 months passed before I heard anything from back home. Daniel called one evening as I was settling in with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. The trial concluded, he said. Your mother and sister both pleaded guilty. They received probation, fines, and restitution orders. The judge was not sympathetic. Did they say anything? Your mother claimed you'd abandoned the family. Your sister cried throughout her testimony. The prosecutor pointed out that attempted fraud doesn't become acceptable just because the victim chose to protect themselves afterward. Good. There's one more thing. Daniel hesitated. Your mother tried to get the court to force you to provide a contact address. She claimed she needed it for family emergencies. The judge denied the request. I felt a cold satisfaction hearing that. Thank you for handling everything. You're welcome. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Some families are toxic beyond repair. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, processing the information. They'd been convicted. They faced consequences, and they still believed themselves to be the victims. Some people never learn. Some people never accept responsibility for their actions. Eleanor would probably tell her version of events for years, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who turned on her family over a simple misunderstanding. Chloe would probably agree, rewriting history to absolve herself of guilt. But I didn't have to listen anymore. I didn't have to participate in their delusions. I'd removed myself from their orbit completely, and the freedom was intoxicating. I built a life in Denver that suited me perfectly. I made friends through work, through a book club I joined, through volunteer activities at the local animal shelter. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just enjoying companionship without pressure. I found a wonderful therapist who helped me process the years of manipulation and control I'd carried for decades. 1 year after leaving, I bought a small house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but entirely mine. I decorated it exactly how I wanted, with no consideration for anyone else's opinions. I planted a garden in the backyard, growing vegetables and flowers. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a scruffy terrier mix who followed me everywhere. This was the life I'd always wanted. Quiet, peaceful, full of small joys and simple pleasures. No drama, no manipulation, no family members trying to take what I'd earned. Eleanor would have hated it. She would have called it boring, pathetic, a waste of my potential. She would have demanded I aim higher, achieve more, acquire things she could brag about to her friends. But Eleanor wasn't here. She had no idea where I lived, what I did, how I spent my days. She had lost that privilege when she tried to steal my house. Sometimes I wondered if she regretted her choices. Probably not. People like Eleanor rarely experience genuine remorse. They are too busy blaming others for the consequences of their own actions. Chloe might feel differently. She'd always been weaker, more easily influenced. Maybe she wished she'd stood up to Eleanor, refused to participate in the scheme. Maybe she lay awake at night thinking about the sister she'd lost. Or maybe she just resented me for refusing to be their victim. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. I'd moved beyond caring about their feelings, their regrets, their justifications. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. 2 years after leaving, I received a letter forwarded through Daniel's office. Eleanor's handwriting covered the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was 6 pages long, single-spaced, full of accusations and manipulations. She claimed I'd ruined Chloe's life by pressing charges. She insisted the whole situation had been blown out of proportion. She demanded I drop the protective order I'd obtained and provide my contact information. The final paragraph read, "You've always been a selfish, ungrateful child. When I'm gone, you'll regret treating your family this way. You'll die alone with nobody who cares about you." I read those words twice, then fed the entire letter through my shredder. She still didn't understand. She still believed her narrative where she was the wronged party and I was the villain. But I wasn't angry anymore. I felt nothing but pity for someone so consumed by entitlement that she couldn't see her own culpability. I wrote one final response, mailing it through Daniel's office so she couldn't trace my location. "I don't regret protecting myself from people who tried to steal from me. I don't regret choosing peace over dysfunction. I don't regret building a life where I'm valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. You wanted me gone. You got your wish. This conversation is over." That was 3 years ago. I haven't heard from them since. My life continued forward. I earned a promotion at work, leading a team of junior analysts. I fell in love with a kind man named Ben who owned a bookstore downtown. We got engaged last spring, planning a small wedding with friends and chosen family. No blood relatives invited, no apologies offered. My future husband knows everything about my past. He held me while I cried, processing years of manipulation and control. He supported my decision to maintain no contact. He never suggested I owe my family forgiveness or reconciliation. "They lost you," he said simply. "That's punishment enough." He was right. They lost a daughter and sister who would have helped them if they'd asked honestly. They lost someone who cared about family despite their flaws. They lost any chance of being part of my future, meeting my partner, knowing my children someday. They lost all of that because they chose greed over love. They chose manipulation over communication. They chose to take rather than ask. And I chose to save myself. Standing in my backyard now, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, I feel no regret about that choice. My dog snoozes at my feet. My partner is inside making dinner. My life is small and quiet and entirely my own. They wanted me gone, so I disappeared along with my house, my money, and every obligation I'd ever felt toward people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. I took it all with me when I left, and I built something beautiful from the ashes of that burned bridge. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to truly live. And I'm living now, fully and completely, in ways I never could have while trapped in their orbit. This is my triumph over the family that tried to destroy me. I survived them. I thrived without them. I found happiness they can never touch or taint or take away. That's the real ending to this story. Not dramatic confrontation or public exposure, but quiet contentment in a life they'll never be part of. They're somewhere back there, probably still playing victim, still blaming me for their choices. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, if true freedom always comes with a price?